You know, every so often, a story comes along that just completely scrambles your brain. This is one of those stories. It starts way back in 1979, but the real punchline, well, that just landed. It's a classic David versus Goliath tale, but for the tech world, where a ghost from gaming's past came back to deliver a checkmate almost 45 years in the making.
So let's get right to it. A software engineer, Robert Caruso, decides to run this wild little experiment. He puts one of the most powerful AIs on the planet, ChatGPT, up against an old chess game from an Atari 2600. He probably expected a quick laugh, right? A swift victory for the modern marvel. But what he got instead was a complete and total demolition. I mean, just look at this matchup. It's almost comical. On one side, you've got Atari's video chess. It's running on a processor that's slower than your coffee maker, with a measly 128 bytes of RAM. Bytes. On the other side, ChatGPT-4, plugged into a global network of supercomputers. This isn't just apples and oranges. It's like pitting a single grain of sand against an entire planet.
And that, right there, is the million-dollar question. How on earth could a primitive program, a relic from a totally different era of technology, so completely school a titan of modern AI? Well, to get that answer, we need to rewind the clock.
You know, the funny thing is, this whole showdown was actually ChatGPT's idea. Yeah. During a chat about AI and chess history, it basically volunteered to play. It was confident it could beat this simple old game, and it was kind of curious to see just how fast it could win. Turns out, the answer to that question was never.
The whole thing was just a 90-minute comedy of errors. ChatGPT was a mess. It got confused about which piece was which, completely lost track of the board state, and made these rookie blunders that were just baffling. And all the while, that little 8-bit program from 1979 just kept chugging along, doing its one simple thing, playing chess with pure, stubborn logic.
So, where did that stubborn, brilliant little program even come from? For that, we got to go all the way back to the launch of the Atari VCS. That's where our story really kicks off, with a promise that seemed, well, basically impossible.
Oh yeah, this was a classic move. Marketing went ahead and slapped a chess piece right on the box for their new console. The only problem, the engineers took one look at the hardware specs and said, "You want us to do what? No way. It can't be done." And you know what? They were probably right. The challenge was absolutely monumental. But then, one person stepped up to take on that impossible challenge. And this is where we meet the real hero of our story, the programmer who had to basically build an entire artificial intelligence from practically nothing.
His name was Larry Wagner. And what made him the perfect person for the job was that he wasn't just a coder, he was a serious, lifelong chess player. He got the soul of the game. For 6 months, he completely immersed himself in the project, setting up 5 to 8 chessboards around his house, programming in Fortran, and just relentlessly testing his algorithms.
Now think about the tools he had. The Atari 2600 had a grand total of 128 bytes of RAM. Okay, let that sink in. Not megabytes, not kilobytes, bytes. It's an amount of memory so small it's almost impossible for us to comprehend building anything on it, let alone a chess AI.
But wait, it gets even crazier, because half of that tiny amount of memory had to be used just for the display, just to draw the board and the pieces on your TV screen. So that left Larry Wagner with just a sliver of digital space to create the entire brain of the game. 64 bytes. That's it. That's all he had to build the entire logic, the entire decision-making tree for a game as complex as chess. It's mind-boggling. This wasn't just programming. This was a masterclass in brutal, elegant efficiency.
You know, these insane constraints forced some truly incredible ingenuity. Just getting the board on the screen was a nightmare. Another Atari programmer, Bob Whitehead, had to invent this clever trick called Venetian blinds. See, he'd draw 4 pieces on the even lines of the TV screen, then the other 4 on the odd lines, flickering back and forth so fast that it created the illusion of a full row of 8. It was a brilliant hack, born purely out of necessity. So, how does all this brilliant, scrappy design from 1979 lead to a modern-day upset? How did this program, dormant for decades, deliver a checkmate across time? This is where we finally understand why David beat Goliath. Okay, so the answer really comes down to 2 completely different kinds of intelligence. The Atari AI, it's a specialist. Its one and only job is to win at chess. It uses raw brute force logic, and it actually understands the rules in the state of the board. But ChatGPT is a generalist. Its goal is to sound human, to generate plausible text. So it knows about chess from all the books and articles it's read, but it doesn't understand the game as a living, breathing, rule-based system. A commenter on LinkedIn, Vincenzo Russo, just summed it up perfectly. He said, "You pitted eloquent text prediction against brute force chess logic, and logic won." And really, that's the whole story in a nutshell. In a game that is defined by pure logic, the outcome was, in hindsight, kind of inevitable.
This whole thing is so fascinating because it forces us to take a step back and ask a much bigger question. It's not just about what happened in this one weird chess game, it's about what this tells us about the future of AI.
And that's really the question at the heart of it, isn't it? In this massive race to build bigger and more powerful AIs, we kind of assume that more data and more processing power automatically means more intelligence. But this little 8-bit underdog just proved that's not always true. The lessons we can take from Larry Wagner's 45-year-old masterpiece are just timeless. A specialized tool, built for one specific job, can still run circles around a much more powerful but unfocused generalist system. It's such a powerful reminder that knowing about a million things isn't the same as truly understanding one thing. So, as we keep building these incredible, world-changing AIs, a story like this is such a vital reminder. Understanding an AI's limitations is every bit as important as celebrating what it can do, because sometimes the most profound lessons don't come from the biggest successes, but from a surprising and seemingly impossible checkmate.